dear friends. This is so sweet to get to be here with you and to get to share some thoughts I had. This thought came to me when I was walking in the woods behind my apartment. One of the best things about my apartment is that it's right on Rock Creek Park, and so I go back there and walk in the woods a lot. And the neat thing about the woods is you can walk in them every day, and every day they're different, so it's not boring. Well, unless you ask Dorothy. When we were first moving there and she was about 6, we were walking in the woods and she was going, wow, look at that, wow, wow. And I thought, wow, no wonder her teachers like her so much, she's so enthusiastic. So we walked for a while and then I said, okay, honey, it's time to turn back. And on our way back, she's going, this is boring, I saw this already. So walking in the woods one day, I got this idea, I got this message that there is a sleeping giant in our midst. And it's so powerful, but currently inactive. And we all have it. And we carry on, aware that it's there, maybe kind of tiptoeing around. We don't want to disturb it. It's not that we're afraid of how powerful it is, but it's huge and towering and maybe overwhelming. We're just overwhelmed. And it seems a little simpler to just go on about our business, our day-to-day life, respecting this sleeping giant, knowing it's there, and it's there if we need it. But we don't need it, so we just carry on. This giant is our deepest faith. And we don't usually need it, because life is kind of made up of the small and the medium. And so every day, step by step, we're okay. But when there are those deep, deep lows, then we know that we might want to call on that sleeping giant, because we might need a little extra help. Now, in unity, we know that God is not powerful. God is power itself. And we know that God is not loving. God is the very essence of love. We entrust ourselves to God, who doesn't possess wisdom, but is wisdom. And when we encounter someone who's powerful, or loving, or wise, or all of the above, that person is expressing God to us. That is what we're seeing. That's an expression of God. And it takes some practice and discipline to conceive of God's fullness. It really is beyond our capacity to comprehend. We can only practice removing the boundaries of what God is and realizing that it's not God here, can't be defined, it's God everywhere. What's more, the boundaries that we think define ourselves, they're imaginary. We don't have actual boundaries. This body is one convenient vessel. We are one with all that is God, all that is love, all that is power, all that is wisdom. Now bidden or unbidden, God is present, and for that, thank God. Even when the giant is sleeping, its power and its love and its light are active on our behalf. We all know that prayer can yield results, yay. But I'm confident we've all had that experience of being blessed by something that we never thought to pray for. Those are the best. Still, summoning God is very, very important. And some of us, from time to time, get distracted and a little cocky and think that we've got it figured out. I get charmed by my own capabilities because I can just do so much. So in my imagination, I've got it going okay, and I save that giant for when I need it the most. But I don't want to do that anymore. I just don't want to do that anymore. So I'm going to do my usual name dropping here. Emmett Fox asked this question: if there were a power available to you that would release to you all health, all wealth, all success and satisfaction, what would you do? Would you take it? One would think. Imagine that there's only a button to push. Imagine that there's only a coupon to mail in. I've got a coupon to mail in, a rebate coupon. It's on my desk. It's been there for a while. Sometimes I don't even think to do it. It's right there available to me. I don't even do it. I could get a $20 Amazon gift card if I would just do this. Very often we let our coupons collect dust in the corner or under a pile of unopened mail, or maybe full of appreciation and expectation. We set it aside for a special occasion. That's when we're going to use this power, later. But remember, it is not a $20 coupon. It is all wealth, all health, all well-being, limitless, infinite, available now, no beginning, no end. It is all available. Ask and ye shall receive. There is no talk about how much. That is not a one-time offer. So if there were a button, would you push it? And if not a button, maybe a lever, would you pull that lever? And if not a lever, but maybe a process. And if not a process, but maybe a prayer. Would you? God is available to support us. Let's participate. Back to Emmett Fox. The latest book I picked up from my shelf is Power Through Constructive Thinking. And right there on page 1, he says, there exists a mystic power that is able to transform your life so thoroughly, so radically, so completely, that when the process is completed, you would scarcely be able to recognize yourself. It is your right and your privilege to make your contact with this power and to allow it to work through your mind, body, and state. This power he speaks of is in our consciousness. And it's what is referred to by the phrase, the kingdom of God is within you. It is that power. Now, we've all called on the power. I don't mean to suggest that we haven't done it. We've done it as individuals, we've done it as a community. But not all the time. It is our nature to be forgetful and distracted, easily discouraged too. And there's no punishment for that. No one's going to fault us for it or criticize us for it. Just maybe remind us to get back to what is our natural state and our birthright. I'm reminded, as I said, I'm a woman of a certain age. I'm reminded of some feedback that we got about Dorothy when she was 2 and she was in preschool. And we went to our first parent-teacher conference. And they said, Dorothy is delightful and creative and bright. And she does best when there's a grown-up working closely with her, prompting her to stay on course. Because she's very distractible. And it's just like the rest of us. We are delightful and creative and bright. And we benefit from some regular prompting to stay on course. We are easily forgetful and distracted, and we have the power to overcome that. And we certainly have the incentive to overcome that. Emmett Fox likens the power, the mighty power of transformation, to the infinite potential of a newborn infant. And he points out that this inner light, this spiritual idea, is represented in the Bible as a child. That is the Christ child. Jesus is the inner light, the spiritual idea, born to empower all believers toward the positive transformation of their lives. Unity is a set of Christian teachings, but a very different kind of Christian from what we most often encounter. A metaphysical interpretation, and we see the Christ child not just as a baby, but as a newly awakened idea of spiritual possibilities. And unity is very practical and very personal. And of course, it's not a collection of stories about people long ago and far away. It's about us. We need to see ourselves in every circumstance, in every story, and in every character. Even in the character of Jesus, who represents potential, pure divinity, pure love. We are supposed to see ourselves there. And when you see yourself as all of that, it's easier to know, to believe that you have immediate access to that transformative power. As transformative, as all-powerful as this is, Jesus doesn't come to us as a mighty king, but as a tiny child who needs protection, who needs nurturing, and who needs to be held and embraced. To awaken the sleeping giant of our deepest faith is to claim the pure divinity, the spiritual idea that is the essence of who we are. I don't know what's harder sometimes, to recognize the Christ child in everybody around me or in myself. But it's not easy, but it's worth trying. Our efforts will be stronger and more fruitful the more we try. I want to tell you about a time that I think about a lot. It's a story from about 10 years ago, about how it can be hard to see that Christ potential in somebody sometimes. I was called, it felt to me like I was called out of the blue by a very nice lady, and I'm not making up the story, but I'm making up the names. I'll call her Linda. She wanted me to officiate a funeral service for her mom. And she was about my age, and she was very nice, and she was a dutiful daughter. And she was doing this, she had been taking care of her mom for the last few years of life, and now she was handling this funeral service, but she really wasn't doing it out of love. They had been estranged for many years. Her mother had been really difficult. So Linda, this woman I was meeting, had gotten pregnant when she was unmarried as a teenager, and the mother would never forgive her. The mother wouldn't speak to her for years, and she ended up marrying the father of the child, and they were married for about 20 years or something. And but the grandmother would never even acknowledge that this child existed. That's how difficult she was. She would never acknowledge this grandchild. And this woman also had 2 sons. Neither of them had spoken to their mother in years, and they weren't expected to come to the funeral. So this woman, Linda, had just come into her mom's life just to look after her. Now, the mother would be buried at one of DC's great historical graveyards, cemeteries. And she had been the president of the board of that historical site for many years, but nobody on the board considered her a friend, and no one on the staff considered her a friend, and they weren't planning to come to the funeral either. I had met the groundskeeper there. He was going to do some coordinating for us, and he was really professional and courteous. I liked him, but he was professional, but he didn't have anything nice to say about this poor woman. I don't know what happened to her in her life, but it was a difficult path, apparently. So when this daughter and I got together to plan the ceremony, it was just going to be kind of a standard thing. I kind of knew the layout. There would be a prayer, there would be a song, there would be a simple eulogy to go over her impressive career, but I needed something personal. And then she said, oh, I know. My mom once wrote a poem called Requiem. I can find that, and you can read that. I thought that sounded perfect. But still, as I was preparing this service, it felt so cold, and I hadn't gotten any warmth from anybody about her. So I didn't know what to draw on. And so I went to bed the night before, and I just said a simple prayer. Dear God, I know you're going to give me something. So the next morning, I woke up early, and I checked my email to see if she had sent me this requiem. And she had. But she also sent me something else. In going through her mom's old papers, she found a poem that had been written about her mother when her mother was a toddler. Written by her own mother. Now this is 10 years ago. I had a toddler. I had my Dorothy. She was about 2 years old. And I now had a poem written by a mother about her 2-year-old daughter running up to her with a little, a clutching in her fist, a bunch of tattered old yellow dandelion flowers. Dorothy had done that exact same thing to me about a week earlier. So here I was, this woman I was trying to memorialize with love, had now come to me as this most lovable, perfect child. And it helped me to remember that she was a completely beloved child of God, perfectly lovable. I was able to see her, I was able to know that, and I was able to feel that love. She was cherished, and God gave me that. Now, whatever bumps and scrapes along the way had hardened her personality, I just never did know. And indeed, at the funeral, the only people who came were the daughter and a handful of her friends. Nobody else. But for me, I was there, and I had that knowledge of her now. And so she was able to be there at her own funeral as a fully beloved being. We are mighty little beings from the time we're born, and sometimes we're tripped up and led astray, but we are no less divine. We are no less beloved, and we are always one with our source and our creator. We are always an expression of God. It's time to awaken that sleeping giant, those times when you could just say that tiny little prayer that says, God, I know you're going to give me something. So easy. It doesn't require poetry or eloquence. We awaken this child and embrace and nurture and guide this child the best we can. And if that child then grows into a mighty force and returns the favor by looking after us and providing for us and guiding for us, the way this daughter was looking after her mom. So one more quote from Emmett Fox. Your ability to contact the spiritual power within yourself, frail and feeble at first, will gradually develop until you find yourself permitting that power to take your whole life into its care. That's all we need to do. There you go. You have arrived at the sweet moment in time and space when you don't have to do anything. Nothing. Take notice of how relaxed you are seated there. And improve upon it. Relax about 10% more. Find that little spot in you done, nothing you will ever do to make God love you less or more. It is complete. You are fully beloved. Fully beloved. And although you're going to open your eyes, and although you're going to become aware of this physical body that gets you around in life, and although you're going to work with the apparent limitations or separations, that's just a tool. Those are all tools. The truth of you, you will never forget. The truth of you is you are infinite. The truth of you is you are infinite. And that you can carry with you all day, all week, forever. So now come back into this space, this beautiful sacred space, where we are so glad to be together as sisters and brothers, as community, as loved ones. And even though this physical body is not the truth of who we are, it is a beautiful representation, and I love seeing you.
Seems like a good time to say that song was actually from the Broadway musical Rent. And some friends invited me to sing it at their wedding, and it just feels like the perfect be here, be now, there's no day but today song. It just feels always appropriate, so I thought I would share it. And this is a song by Peter Mayer. He's a wonderful songwriter out of Minnesota, and it is timely now, today, and maybe for like another 4 or 5 days. So I'm going to sing it. It's called John's Garden. So you hear a little sleeping giant, a little illumination. If you listen past the pumpkins. John wandered back when he reached the pumpkin patch and began